Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a strong Master League team that helped a trainer climb 227 points in one day to reach Legend rank. Now this team combines two Pokemon that I've featured individually this season, Eternatus and Shadow Rhyperior. Both these Pokemon are incredibly strong Master League options by themselves. Pair them together, and you have a recipe for success. This team features Eternatus on the lead, Lunala as the save switch, and Shadow Rhyperior as the closer, and this team is an absolute force of nature. Even with me not playing my best today, the team just kept getting wins. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we pick up a good lead in the first match, Eternatus into Xerneas. Despite the fact that Eternatus' fast moves are double resisted, Eternatus straight up wins the zeros against Xerneas. Flame Thrower is able to two-shot, and Eternatus does end up winning charge attack priority here. Xerneas is going to hit back with the Moonblast, but that's not a problem whatsoever. Eternatus is going to make the Flamethrower on the CMP tie, but my opponent makes a very nice catch, catching the Flamethrower onto Reshiram. But unfortunately for them, we have a very strong answer to Reshiram, as in comes Shadow Rhyperior. My Shadow Rhyperior stats are absolutely terrible. I actually recently finished the best buddy on this Shadow Rhyperior, and even best buddied, it doesn't reach the combat power of a level 50 Hundo Rhyperior. That's just because, unfortunately, I've never found one that's particularly good stats, so I just built what I had and best buddied it to hopefully make it slightly less scuffed. My opponent brings in Lunala as their final Pokemon. I put up the shield, and I'm going to go for the double Drill Run. Even though Drill Run is a substantially less efficient attack than Rock Wrecker, the name of the game at this point is just getting whatever damage that I can. So I fire off the Drill Run on alignment, strictly just to outpace Lunala, and I'm able to grab the opponent's final shield. They are forced to throw here. They're unable to get the farm down. I could have made it to Drill Run number 3, and now Rhyperior has done its job. It can be no-shielded. Now I can just bring in Lunala and go for the full farm down. My opponent should look to pivot out here. They do have energy stored on that Xerneas. There's the Xerneas switch in. Xerneas will fire off the Moonblast, but Moonblast isn't really a problem for Lunala. Lunala can tank that very comfortably, make it to the Shadow Ball, and the second Geomancy damage will never land because they're getting knocked out by the Shadow Ball. So Shadow Ball will take the knockout. Back in comes Lunala. We have the health advantage. We're able to farm down, and we get the game 1 win. Picking up a bit of an awkward lead in game number 2, leading Eternatus into Metagross. Or at the very least, it should in theory be an awkward lead, but because of Flamethrower, Eternatus can fight back here. Meteor Mash lands, that's not really a problem, and now Eternatus can hit for big damage with Flamethrower. If they put up the shield, I'm looking to pivot. Even though Lunala doesn't have an amazing matchup in a Metagross, if I have a shield advantage, I feel very comfortable switching in. Now I have Lunala up energy, the Metagross is going to bail out and bring in Palkia. Palkia would have been a huge problem for my Shadow Rhyperior, so this is a very important bait out. I'm not baiting, I'm just going straight for the Moonblast. Moonblast would not have one-shot there, but it would have put them very low, so they will invest a shield. If they're shielding, I'm going to shield right back. I've already baited out the water type. I feel pretty comfortable in trusting Shadow Rhyperior to win the zeros against whatever their final Pokemon is. So, I full send Moonblast once again. Palkia gets KO'd, and they're going to bring back in the Metagross. Metagross is going to have to throw. They're not going to get the farm down. Lunala was simply too healthy, and I'm going to bring in the Shadow Rhyperior. This is going to put Rhyperior up a turn against whatever they have in the back. Their final Pokemon is revealed to be Kyurem White, and this game is over. I can outpace by one singular turn due to that one-turn switch. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We get a great lead in the next match, Eternatus into Reshiram. Part of what makes Eternatus so incredibly strong is its incredibly efficient pacing to Dragon-type damage. If you exclude Garchomp, then Eternatus has the fastest pacing to Dragon damage in the entire Master League, and that puts it at a very big advantage when playing against the other Dragons. Reshiram is able to land the crunch. My opponent makes a catch of Dynamax Cannon onto Zacian. That honestly was the experience of leading Eternatus. Opponents would be able to get some very nice catches, but this team is structured to be able to punish their switch-ins. If they bring in something like a Reshiram to catch a Flamethrower, Rhyperior is going to destroy them. If they bring in a Zacian, well, both my back Pokemon are going to do very well here. I decide to bring in the Rhyperior. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon in the back is going to be Palkia, and let's full send Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker is a devastatingly efficient charge attack. It's a Rock-type clone of Blast Burn, and by landing the Rock Wrecker, that ends the game. Drill Run will get the shield. I can just stay in with the Rhyperior, pressure away my opponent's energy, and then I have Lunala up a shield, and that's exactly where Lunala wants to be. I know that my opponent does have Crunch on their Reshiram. They pivot into Reshi, and I'm going to bring in Eternatus. Even though this does give farm over to the Reshiram, what it's going to allow me to do is go for the farm down. My opponent did not end up pivoting out with a move on their Palkia, so as long as I just get the farm down, I win the game. So we get the farm down. Thanks to that Dragon Tail that we landed on Eternatus, I can go for the Moonblast, KO the Palkia. Shadow Ball would have still taken the knockout there, but Moonblast will guarantee it. We get a great lead in the next match, Eternatus into Ho-Oh. They throw an Incinerate, safe switch into Xerneas, and I bank a Dynamax Cannon before bringing in Lunala. Lunala down energy can still do very, very well into Xerneas due to Lunala's pacing advantage. Xerneas is able to land the Moonblast, but the Moonblast attack drop is actually a very big problem. This means that my Shadow Ball is not really going to be doing any meaningful damage onto the Xerneas. Xerneas is now able to tank that very comfortably, and I decide I'm just going to sacrifice Lunala. I already have a ton of energy on Eternatus, so let's go for farm with Rhyperior. My opponent pivots out, they pivot back into the Ho-Oh. If this is their switch in into an up energy Rhyperior, then my goodness, they must be so weak to Rhyperior in the back. I decide to go for the Drill Run bait, and the bait ends up paying off getting the shield. They could have Earthquake or Solar Beam here, so I will respect it, and they actually have Earthquake, so that ends up being a very important shield. Now this, however, cannot be an Earthquake, it can only be a Brave Bird. Brave Bird, I am going to no-shield, and then throw one Mud Slap, bank the energy, and then send in Eternatus. Eternatus will still be able to outpace, but I've positioned myself where I'm only one away from the double Drill Run. Dynamax Cannon will land, Ho-Oh is going to fall, the final Pokemon in the back is Zacian, and this game is over. My opponent gets a Flamethrower catch, a very flashy catch on their end, but unfortunately, it's just simply not going to matter. I have too much energy on the Rhyperior. All I have to do is just ensure that a Flamethrower lands on Zacian, whether I get the shield or whether the damage lands. Either way, it's game winning. The Rhyperior is just way too far ahead. My opponent can fire off energy, but I can just simply put up the shield, fire off another Flamethrower, and I still have 7 Mud Slaps of energy on the Rhyperior. Banking the Rhyperior energy, trusting in the fact that they must be weak to it, ends up being game winning. My opponent tries to read the combo play as they undertap, and they instantly resign the match. We move to the next game. We've got the Battle of Dragons Eternatus into Kyurem White. This matchup is very bait dependent. Kyurem White, I believe, can actually emerge victorious in the 2s, going for a triple Fusion Flare, so there's always the call to make. Do you want to invest a shield if you're the Eternatus? I decide to respect it in case they do go for the Ice Burn. Unfortunately, I do get Fusion Flare baited. My opponent's going to send in Lunala. Not really the catch I was expecting, but I'm very happy to try and neutralize Lunala here. Dynamax Cannon will hit for some very nice damage, and I will be able to outpace by one singular turn. I'm hoping Dynamax Cannon will be enough to secure the knockout. It's going to be close, but Lunala, it's so bulky. It hangs on 1 HP, and that is going to cost me my Eternatus. They do still have a decent amount of energy stored on that Kyurem White, and that could be a problem. My opponent sends in their final Pokemon. It's going to be a Shadow Reshiram. Reshiram tries to go for the CMP tie, and I'm able to get a Shadow Claw for free. This will allow me to double up on Shadow Balls, and if I ever see a switch into the Kyurem, like right here, I can immediately fire off the Shadow Ball. This forces their final shield, or they lose all the energy. They sacrifice the Kyurem, they're all in on the Shadow Reshiram, but Shadow Reshiram has already revealed Crunch, and without Draco Meteor, they cannot get rid of the Shadow Rhyperior. I look to overfarm with Lunala, bank energy, and then bring in the Rhyperior able to get a Mud Slap through as they fire off the Crunch. Shadow Reshiram does hit very hard, so Crunch will actually do some pretty decent damage, but as they go for Crunch number 2, it's just not going to be enough. They needed the debuff, they did not get it. Rhyperior survives, and we're able to escape with the win. We move to the next match, Eternatus leading into Palkia. This should be a pretty decent matchup. In my eyes, as the Eternatus, you should always look to play the zeros here, because the only way this matchup goes awry is if you end up shielding an Aqua Tail bait. No shielding a Spatial Rend is fine because you have shield advantage, but shielding an Aqua Tail like I end up doing here, this game is here to illustrate how the game goes awry if you don't play correctly. I shield the Aqua Tail, my opponent can now outpace, and I'm forced to double shield. That's a very big problem as they still have a Palkia, and my Shadow Rhyperior is now vulnerable in the back. I decide to save almost 2 Dynamax Cannons, catch onto Lunala, but I still don't feel like I'm in a very good position. Lunala is now going to be answered with Goldengo. Goldengo is going to try for the farm down, but they're unable to get it. This is very good news for me. I have the Flamethrower banked on Eternatus, and Eternatus is going to win charge type priority over the Goldengo. So even though Goldengo has a ton of energy, they're going to lose it here. So I get to bring in the Eternatus, but the energy doesn't show up. You can see there, I had banked almost 2 Dynamax Cannons, but the energy is just missing. I don't know where it went, but unfortunately that just instantly ends the game. I had already brutally misplayed this game by shielding in an Eternatus Palkia matchup, but I also wanted to include this just to say, what the heck, man? What are we doing? In the back, they have Xerneas, so it would have been a tricky game either way, but I think it would have actually been playable. They get the farm down, and we end up taking the loss. Speaking of Garchomp, I mentioned it earlier on in the video, and here it is. Garchomp is actually a pretty scary Pokemon for this team to see. I end up no-shielding, hoping they don't go for the Earth Power, and thankfully they only go for the Twister. Twister still does a lot of damage, so imagine how hard an Earth Power would have hit. This isn't even the Shadow Garchomp, it's the regular Garchomp as well, and the regular Garchomp is honestly surviving these Dragon Tails surprisingly well. I really did not anticipate seeing a Garchomp in the Open Master League, so it is pretty cool to see. I will throw 2 Dragon Tails and fire off the Dynamax Cannon right before they're able to make their next Twister. My opponent is going to end up no shielding. They're going to send in Zacian, and I'm going to pivot out and bring in Lunala. Ideally, I just don't want to give them a massive energy head start. I know that I can always survive Behemoth Blade here and make it to 2 Shadow Balls, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. This is a specific stat check if you have the Honda Lunala. You can always make 2 Shadow Balls in this matchup. So I fire off the Shadow Ball, that's going to put them low. They bring in Zamazenta, hoping for the farm down, but they're still not able to get it. Lunala able to survive, make the Shadow Ball, and get some very nice chip damage. Now I can bring in the Shadow Rhyperior, and then just go for the full Mud Slap farm down. I still do have a little bit of energy on my Eternatus in case I need it for later. I'm still a ways off a move, but at the very least, having some energy in the bank is always going to be better than none. Back in comes the Zacian. I can build up to the back-to-back Drill Runs, and it turns out we won't even need Eternatus. We can just win it with Rhyperior. Drill Run gets the shield. There's Drill Run number 2, and that is going to seal it. It does really seem that energy management with Shadow Rhyperior can help you win a lot of games with this team. We've got mirror leads in the next match, Eternatus versus Eternatus, but my opponent does have the best buddy boost equipped. Since they're always going to win CMP, the only shielding scenario that I do okay in is the zeros. I can survive the Dynamax Cannon and hit back hard with my own before pivoting out. My opponent no shields as well. I switch Rhyperior. It's a simultaneous switch, Rhyperior into Lunala. At this point, I'm wondering if we're running the exact same team. If we are, this is going to be a very close game. One thing that I do know about the Shadow Rhyperior Lunala matchup is you used to be able to win the 1-0s by firing off the Rock Wrecker here. Rock Wrecker would put them low and they would feint to the next Mud Slap. But now with damage registration error being guaranteed, they will always make a second move, and that's why I have to go for double Drill Run. Because otherwise, I'm just not able to force a shield from my opponent. It is the same team. They bring in Rhyperior, I overfarm, fire off the last second move, and they catch onto Eternatus. But honestly, this would be good for me if they let this go. They realize it and they put up the shield. They need the damage from the Eternatus onto Lunala to try and win the game with Rhyperior. I bring in Lunala, I'm able to get the farm down, and back in comes Rhyperior. Rhyperior does have a lot of stored energy here. They do have enough for the Rock Wrecker. I put up the shield, but they go for the Drill Run. I'm just going to try and overfarm here, fire off the Shadow Ball. At some point, I will try and go for the catch. Eternatus is very low, but I should be able to survive a slap or 2, so I farm up a ton of energy, go for the catch, they stay in, and this is going to be close. I should barely be outside of Rock Wrecker range. This is as close as it can get. They go for the Drill Run, the Shadow Claw KOs, and we survive a very tense mirror match. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Eternatus into Kyurem White. As always, just going to fire off the Dynamax Cannon right away, and look to put some early shield pressure onto my opponent. Even if this matchup is a little bit awkward for both parties involved, I'm getting some really nice damage with the Dragon Tail to land. I'm going to shield to guarantee the next Dragon Tail connects, fire off Dynamax Cannon, and I will lose the CMP tie as they go for the Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare, obviously not going to take the knockout, and I decide that I will go for a slight undercharge. I do want to try and leave them at around 1 HP here, but unfortunately, Dynamax Cannon will still take the KO. I wanted to undercharge because then I could have taken slightly more damage on Eternatus to give less farm for whatever they bring in. And it turns out they're bringing in Reshiram. Reshiram tries to CMP tie Rhyperior, and I get an entire Mud Slap for free. I respect the Draco, they're only on Crunch, and now I can just go for a full farm down. Crunch is not really something Rhyperior has to worry about. If they're staying in, they're probably weak in the back. Oh, you better believe they're weak in the back, as in comes Zekrom. This poor Zekrom is about to get annihilated by Rhyperior. Drill Run connects. Zekrom barely clinging to life as I bring in Lunala. Lunala will get hit with what's more than likely going to be a Crunch, but Crunch is not going to be a problem. We can just farm down the Reshiram, take the win, as Shadow Rhyperior is just an absolute menace. We move to the final match, Eternatus into Reshiram. This is a very nice lead. After a while playing this team, I did decide to play the Reshiram lead similar to how I play Palkia. We just get a shield advantage and then just end up no shielding. Force your opponent to take the knockout with the big move. If they don't have Draco Meteor, I'm not getting knocked out here. It is just going to be the Crunch. My opponent can now fire off Crunch number 2, but I can just let this go and go for big farm with Shadow Rhyperior. Now I've set up a shield advantage for my backline, which should work quite well for me. Rhyperior will hit the field, my opponent sends in Palkia, I bank energy, and then pivot out into Lunala. Lunala would not get knocked out here by a Spatial Rend. Spatial Rend is an incredibly efficient charge attack, but Lunala is able to hold on. At this point, I can probably even go for the Shadow Ball. I've gotten some nice damage with the Mud Slaps and the Shadow Claws. Shadow Ball will be enough to secure the KO. Their final Pokemon in the back is going to be Zacian, and my goodness, they were so ABA weak to Rhyperior. I can fire off the Shadow Ball, they should burn the Switch Clock, and then I can bring back in the Rye. Rhyperior is just going to farm everything down. In comes Reshiram getting deleted as well. I double up on Drill Runs when they're at 1 HP. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. After playing this team for several sets over 2 days, I can say this is an extremely strong climbing team for the Open Master League. Unfortunately, any team with Eternatus is not going to be particularly accessible because Eternatus was only available for 1 weekend, and Shadow Rhyperior is also a pretty difficult Pokemon to get. As you can tell by the fact that I built a pretty terrible IV1 13-13-14 and then ended up having to best buddy it, so that way I wouldn't get break pointed by Reshiram and Zekrom Dragon Breath anymore. One thing that I do want to note is my win rate with this team absolutely skyrocketed once I learned what shielding scenarios to play with Eternatus. Initially, I was very shield intensive with my Eternatus, and I felt like more often than not, my opponents just ended up taking shield advantage, and then a Pokemon like Lunala was very difficult for this backline to deal with. However, once I recognized that Eternatus is basically there to generate a shield advantage because of the fact that it can just neutrally bully all of the other dragons, force them into throwing nuke moves, and set up the backline for success, that's what really unlocks the true power of this team. If you're able to get a shield advantage for either Shadow Rhyperior or Lunala, then you're going to be in a really good spot to potentially sweep your opponent, as both those Pokemon have insane sweep potential. As far as Shadow Rhyperior, when you're up energy in neutral matchups, the move you typically want to go for is Rock Wrecker. One thing that I noticed watching some trainers play Shadow Rhyperior is they ended up throwing Drill Run too much. Drill Run is a pretty good move, but it is not in the same stratosphere as Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker is an absurdly efficient charge attack. And what's so great about Rock Wrecker is even though Mud Slap damage has been nerfed in previous seasons, a lot of the times you can land a Rock Wrecker and farm something down. Like if you're a Shadow Rhyperior that's up energy into Palkia, you will actually have the ability to Mud Slap down after landing a Rock Wrecker. Another optimization that I learned while playing this team specifically was how to deal with opponents who catch flamethrowers onto Reshiram. Because if you end up leading into something like a Zacian or a Xerneas and they catch a flamethrower, you feel like, okay, I'm in a very good spot, I have a Rhyperior, I can bring it in and farm down. In my eyes, I think that's actually a misplay. Because Mud Slap doesn't hit as hard as it used to, typically the Reshiram is able to make 2 crunches and they're actually able to pressure away a shield because of how much damage Dragon Breath does. So I actually think it's well worth your while if you bring a Rhyperior into Reshiram in that specific scenario to Drill Run instantly. The Drill Run will take the knockout, but what it won't do is put you in a position where you're forced to give up a shield, and then you're potentially having a Mon getting brought in that wins charge type priority over you, and suddenly you're down 2 shields to 0. Whereas playing the zeros and then just firing off that Drill Run to secure the knockout puts you in a significantly better position, because then you're not down shields, and then you can get Lunala on the field up energy, and you're just in a significantly better position to actually convert a win. So it seems a little counterintuitive to bring a Pokemon into a good matchup and fire off your Drill Run right away instead of over farming, but I do actually think that it can make quite a bit of sense just because it doesn't put you in a shield deficit, which is something that Lunala really does not want to see. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the content by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.